Welcome to the Foundry, where leaders are forged daily. And now your host, George Roberts.
Welcome back, entrepreneurs. Today we're joined by Tim Fergestad, founder of Oak Street Assets. For helping people to find financial freedom through commercial real estate, Tim spent his earlier years studying the only organ that can study itself, the human brain. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, I'm really excited because you do have obviously one of the more interesting backgrounds coming from neuroscience. And before we launch into the real estate, maybe I'll just ask you what it was like to be in neuroscience, and were there any lessons learned that transferred well into real estate?
Oh, sure. There's a lot of skill sets that did not. A lot of technical things, but certainly getting used to wearing a lot of hats helped, right? Because I had to write grants, write papers, present, teach, plan out the sort of the research plan, and you have to do a lot of that all yourself. So you kind of wear a lot of hats in real estate too. So being able to manage people and work as a team definitely helped.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that thoroughness and almost that entrepreneurial spirit in some ways when you have a research program, and really cool stuff. So, wow, neuroscience. Anything you want to tell us about your neuroscience career?
I enjoyed it. And a little part of me misses it once in a while because I did like it a lot. But I also like having more control over my life and seeing my family and making money.
Perfect. Well, perfect segue, because I'm sure a lot of our listeners are in the same situation that, they may have a very interesting career, but would probably love to have a little more control over their time, maybe a little control over having the option to see their family a little more often. So tell us about that. Tell us how you're helping people currently find financial freedom.
Certainly. Well, this is, my wife is a physician. And so like ourselves, when you're thoroughly educated and you're working, and you start your first job really, later in life, and you still have to ask permission to go do stuff. That's a tough sell, right? And so I know a number of physicians that some of my investors and stuff, who that's exactly what they want, right? They want control over their time. They want to be able to buy back some of their time and their life back, so they can practice on their schedule, right?
Yeah, I think that's very common among high wage earners. You feel like, wow, you get this degree or you get this title, and now all of a sudden life is easy, but it really isn't. And you find that job in many ways owns you. And love the idea. I do know many MDs who've gotten to the point where they're saying, hey, I want to practice on my own schedule. Yeah, very well put. Very well put. So how about your story? So you started out in neuroscience, and then you did move into real estate. That's quite a transition. Tell us about that.
Okay, sure. So basically, when my previous position was in the genetics department at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and which was great. But when my wife finished her residency, she became the breadwinner. We wanted to move back out west. That's why I've been in Phoenix for the last 15 years. She was pregnant with our first kid, who's now 15. And we kind of wanted to raise our kids ourselves and not like farm that out. And that's a luxury we were able to do. So as the breadwinner, we decided I'd stay at home, be the stay-at-home parent. And once we had a couple kids, they were in school and I had more time again, I wanted to do something again that was flexible. Right, for her schedule, for example, she'd do a 24-hour call somewhere. I'd be the one doing everything, and I needed some flexibility with my time. And real estate allowed me. I've always liked real estate, and that sort of provided me the flexible schedule to sort of work on my time. I started off. I got a license here, and I wanted to sort of flip and hold some of my own properties. I ended up not liking that market so much and ended up doing rental properties in other markets, in other states, for example. But I also have a land wholesaling company, which again was very flexible. It's great because land, people aren't in a big hurry, right? There's no tenants, it's vacant usually. And it's basically, I can do that at home casually right? That nobody has to move in or out on a certain date. Nobody's in a hurry. So that worked out great. I did some other stuff as well, but for the most part, I started investing in syndications and those in other people's deals, which I think is a great way to start. And those that were outperforming all my other deals, my stock market portfolio, my rentals and everything, and were way less of a headache. So I started doing that. And I started doing more of those, and I decided to focus on that actively myself.
Yeah, great theme. I mean, a lot of people see staying at home, taking care of children as a career dead end, but so many people, particularly in real estate, are able to turn that into the next rocket stage in their career development. So it's pretty amazing. I wish more people will get that message, because I'm sure there are a lot of people sitting at home right now feeling like they may be underutilized, and who knows, maybe a real estate career is just right around the corner. So great message you're bringing.
Sure. That period was pinnacle to having the time really to educate myself and go into, I think it's a Jim Rohn quote, higher education will earn you a living, but self-education will make you wealthy.
Yeah. Love it. Love it.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it reminds me of a favorite Mark Twain quote, which is, that he never let his education get in the way of his learning. But yeah, people who are like that, who have that drive, the entrepreneurial world offers extraordinary rewards.
Certainly, but having that time I started investing in myself, and I started because I learned a lot through my sort of tenure in science, and I learned a lot of skills. I learned a lot of things. I learned electron microscopy. I learned electrophysiology. I learned DNA manipulation techniques and genomics and data analysis, all sorts of stuff. But I wouldn't go home and read. I was reading papers all day. I wouldn't go home and read books for myself, right? I wouldn't, there's self-help books or development books. And I stopped sort of working on myself for a long time. And it was when I had that free time again to start getting more into philosophy and really making myself better in every way I can.
Any particular philosophy that you're interested in?
I just more of the practical Stoic philosophies, right? Trying to, one of my favorite, my boy is in the marching band, and they made him, actually their theme for their program last year was The Obstacle is the Way, which is a book by Ryan Holiday about the Stoic philosophies and stuff. And then this year they made him read The Ego is the Enemy, which is another one, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah, great. Modern Stoic. It's pretty amazing to see that coming back today.
Yes.
And particularly among people who have an entrepreneurial approach, it's a philosophy of action, which I believe separates it greatly from some of the other philosophies, which seem to focus more on omphalos for those people that don't have million-word vocabularies. That's the old Greeks that would gaze at their navels. That's how they would meditate. But yeah, the Stoics were all about action. People like Marcus Aurelius, people who could charge into battle or run an empire.
But I didn't appreciate a lot of the humanities. I mean, I was an engineering geek, right? In high school and stuff. I was into astronomy and have degrees in physics and chemistry, and that was super cool to me. And sociology was just too touchy-feely. I wasn't into it. But having gotten older and having kids and seen politics takes a bigger stage in your mind space and stuff. It became much more insightful and helpful. But also, I grew up thinking philosophy was like high philosophy, right? Oh, we study, do you really exist or not? That wasn't very useful as compared to like as you said, the Stoic actionable thoughts.
Yeah, great stuff. So then let's merge back into your real estate career. Maybe you can take us through some of your early acquisitions. So you had this sort of time in between, you're with the kids and you're looking for something. Now you got more time. Did you jump right into commercial real estate, or was there a residential phase in between?
Yeah, like a lot of people, I did the transition through rentals. I did some single family rentals. I did those with some of my retirement accounts. If people don't know, you can transfer your 401k through your previous employer into some sort of self-directed IRA or something. I had some single family rentals owned through retirement funds, for example, which were good, but still required, even with property management companies and stuff in other states, you still had to babysit them, and they had plenty of headaches still. I started actively in multifamily the beginning of 2021. That's when I started. I decided I've invested in a lot of different syndications and other people's deals in multifamily, just the scalability of it. But when you have a vacancy in a single family rental, it can crush your whole year, right? For a few months alone, or the damages that one tenant can do and stuff. So that started to become paramount to me, because it doesn't take much to ruin a single family rental. Having a great tenant, they can be awesome, right? They can really be great investments, but they can also be very tricky if you're not there to manage them yourself.
Yeah, excellent lesson. The stability of a multifamily investment, certainly much greater than, anything could be damaged, or it could even be you have a good tenant, but what happens when the furnace or the water heater goes? Boom.
Yep.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay. So then you went sort of the conventional route. You did some residential. I know that today you've got over 1,000 units actively and passively. So at some point then you started picking up units in larger batches.
Yep. I've it's probably double that now, but I have a bunch of limited partner investments and in different deals, different sizes and stuff. And as well as some developments. I've started moving into more development deals, just because a lot, with the market being the way it's been in the past couple of years, a lot of the values on some of these C-class apartments and these older ones have gotten to the point where you could build for the same price, and it just didn't make sense. So I started doing a lot more of the new build or developmental projects as well. I'm just doing those passively. I haven't partnered up with anybody to build yet myself, but I have. My first deal was in Nashville last year. One of my partners found the deal, and that was off market. And he'd been establishing relationships with brokers in that area, and I can tell you a little bit about that deal. That was a great deal. It turned out good, but it had some tricks, some lender issues, as a lot of deals do. Shall I tell you about that deal?
Yeah, please do.
That one was they call it East Nashville, but it's actually north. I don't know how that works, but they basically did a motel conversion, and so these are tiny units, and they leased it up with tenants and sold it right quickly. And so then when we took it over, we had to reevaluate all the tenants and found out most of them weren't paying rent and so forth. And during COVID, that was kind of a tricky spot to turn around. But even with all those challenges and delays, we were able to do that. Now we've got it up over 90%. It's doing great. And actually I think it's getting the highest price per square foot in Nashville. We're getting like $1,000 rents for, less than 300 square foot units. And
great lessons there, right? Oh, go ahead. I want to ask you some questions about those tiny units.
Okay. Well, just real quick to circle back to that lender issue is we did have some complications. The lenders, and I've had this in a few deals, the lenders basically hold all the cards, right? You give them a good faith deposit and you pay them and work with them, and then they can bail on you last minute without any recourse. So we had that happen on that deal. I had it happen on some other deals, but 4 days before close on that Nashville deal, the lender said, we decided not to do this loan. And so fortunately we had an extension written into our contract, and we were able to extend and scramble to get a new lender in, and then still close. Terms weren't as good, but we still managed to go, and it's actually done great since. But it's always very scary to when a lender has that sort of control. And they keep your money that they spent on their legal fees and their good faith deposits, and they just walk away. And the reason they gave wasn't anything about the property. They just said, we decided not to do loans under 40 million anymore.
Yeah.
So
it sounds awfully arbitrary when you're just days from the closing table.
Sure. Particularly when you have, hard money down, as the buyer, and there's in that market, that was sort of the way it goes. There's no financing contingencies. They're starting to come back a little bit in some markets, but for the most part, that makes it very exciting.
Right. Well, those tiny units, those are interesting, because I know that sometimes they work out very well. Like you said, you're probably getting the highest per square foot in Nashville, but they can also be challenging if you have too many. You said motel, so I'm gathering this is maybe 10 or 20 units?
124.
Oh, I must have misheard you. I thought you said motel. So
It was
this is
a motel.
it wasn't.
Motel.
That's quite a motel at 120
Yes.
units.
Yes, but they're
And
all
so
tiny.
yeah,
So yeah,
you kept them all as tiny units. Then you weren't
Yep.
breaking down walls.
correct.
So how did that turn out? I think you said that you did get your occupancy up, so that's still an ongoing process. So you
Sure.
didn't have the issue where, and of course, again, we're talking Nashville here. This is a place where people are moving to. They need housing. And so you didn't have an issue where you just can't absorb 120 efficiencies.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are some definite challenges with this sort of property. People don't want to stay there forever, right? We get a lot more 6-month leases and stuff, and but they pay more for that, right? And so we offer some of them half of the units furnished, which is really easy to do when they're that small. You put in a bed and a table or something, and it's a TV and stuff. It's pretty easy. But people coming into Nashville, that's what they want. We have some unique amenities, right? We have a pool, we have a yoga room, we have a workout room, we have a podcast room, we have maybe a recording studio room, right? For the musicians coming in. They're coming in, they don't really have anything, they just got their carload full of stuff, and they want a place to figure out Nashville for a while. And so it works out pretty well.
I like that. That's an amenity I haven't tried yet. I don't have any recording studios in any of my apartments, but perfect. Sounds like it fits your market perfectly. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'm fascinated by it because, again, these are deals that are different. They frighten a lot of people.
Mhm.
There are challenges, and if you can surmount those challenges, then the rewards are sometimes surprisingly good. Yeah, I'm actually looking at a former motel that looks to be about half converted into efficiencies right now. So something very near and dear to my heart. Now, that was one of your earlier deals, correct? When you got into
Yes.
commercial?
Yep. That was
Awesome.
my first deal. That was my first deal as a general partner on the active side. I currently have a couple deals. I had a couple deals fall out of contract earlier this year in Texas. I have another deal right now we're partnered on in Dallas, and a new one in Nashville. So those are both 506Cs. So I can share all those and stuff. But for the most part, they're great. They're B+ or A asset class properties. One's 200 units, one's 145. They both have a lot of loss to lease, so there's a lot of sort of more managerial value add up front, which is nice with this current market. But also, there's a quarter of the units in Dallas and 100% of the units in Nashville are still vintage. So there's another, in addition to the $200 to $300 rent bumps we get just from the loss to lease in the market being below market, there's another $200 to $300 based off the renovations. So we got some great margins there for physical and managerial value adds.
Right. So that's one of your newer deals. That's something that you're still raising for.
Yep.
So,
Two deals that are available now, and then have another one coming up later this year, I believe, that we'll be helping out with on a development, which an A class here in Phoenix. But for the most part, the returns on these are all solid. They're right. They're 20% average annual return or more, right? 16+ internal rate of return. We're trying to double everybody's money in 5 years, all standard stuff, but there's a lot of potential additional upside on these deals, and they're beautiful properties. They're right. Like the Nashville one was 25 years old, built in 96, 97.
So it sounds like you've done a variety of deals. So starting with that motel conversion, and that sounds like there was certainly some degree of construction lift. And some of your newer deals you mentioned, a lot of it has to do with operations. Right. I think that's a common theme. It seems like a lot of people, they start out focusing on renovations and trying to push the rents.
Mm-hmm.
And as you get more experienced, it becomes easier to find operational improvements.
Right. Expenses you can lower. Yes.
Expenses you can lower. Absolutely. Do you want to tell us some of your tips and tricks?
I'm starting to appreciate more about challenging the tax assessment every year. I've seen that work magic for some people, and that's one of your biggest expenses. So that's upfront, something that a lot of people do everywhere. And at all their assets every year, they go in and try and get it reevaluated. And it's a simple thing to do, and it can have a really big effect. I don't know the percentage of how successful that is, but we've had that happen on one asset. And then we also there's little programs sometimes for those sort of additions where you can get tax credit in the city or county for your renovations. You just got to go to look for them and go find them. So that can be a big deal, particularly in Texas, right, where the taxes are so high. We had one in there that would have been a real boon to the numbers on the deal. We're always trying to get better returns for our investors.
Yeah, so many programs out there. Hard to really summarize, but yeah, private charities too. I spent a lot of time this week looking at a private charity to get some help for my future tenants. And it's definitely worth a little time. You dig around a little bit and you may find some gold.
Yep. And with the rental assistance, it's dying out in most markets now, but we really had to help tenants because they wouldn't help themselves. You have to like show them, look, you can get, you're struggling to pay your rent right now. There's a program right here. Let us help you, right? And help you with the paperwork.
100%. I've been through it myself where, I just got so frustrated. I had a tenant and I just wanted to say, hey, buddy, why won't you help me help yourself? And then I realized that he had only a cell phone, so he has no computer. And it was very, very hard to navigate through all of, as I remember, I think this was from Orange County. So county level assistance. But then we found, or maybe it was he who found, a private charity. And then now all of a sudden they had a much simpler process. I think he could actually just go there in person and maybe show some ID and maybe some pay stubs. And we were off to the races. So yeah, it's different. Sometimes I find you really have to put yourself into your mindset, and it may not be the mindset you're accustomed to.
Sure, for sure, certainly.
So you mentioned Nashville. Do you have any other markets you're looking at?
Well, I'm here in Phoenix, and Phoenix is a great market. I'm trying to look here in Phoenix. I have partners that keep finding deals in other places, so I end up going there.
I was going to ask because I know that Phoenix is hot. So it's just that you're finding the deals elsewhere, but you're not averse.
I love Phoenix. I'm invested in a couple of deals here. I did a development deal here before, and I'm invested in another one here, value add. Last year, I haven't looked at the stats this year, but last year, over half of the residential purchases were California buyers, and over half of the commercial purchases were California buyers. And they have, their cost of capital is less in a few different ways. Often there's a lot of 1031 money, right? They're trying to bring over here, and so they're willing to pay more because they're saving even more, by parlaying their California exit. So that's been a real challenge here in Arizona, is competing with some of them.
Right. So I gather that you've probably learned a lot as a limited partner. You mentioned getting your self-directed IRA together, and by the way, that's something that I would highly recommend to the listeners here, whether or not you've done an active deal already. Most of us, if we have any change at all sitting on the sidelines, it's in an IRA, and it takes a long time. I think if there's one bit of advice I could give people, it would be, don't wait until you need a self-directed IRA. If you think, hey, I want to invest in apartments, at some point, maybe I'm going to be an active investor. I'd like to be a passive investor in the meantime. I would just say, do it now, and you can thank me later when you're not racing to wire by the deadline. But any lessons learned as a limited partner, or any lessons or advice you'd like to give us about using self-directed IRAs?
Certainly. So I mentioned earlier that I had some self-directed IRA real estate investments, and those were great because I owned the properties outright. There was no financing or loans involved, and that's fine. That's all tax-free. All the income and appreciation and all that tax-free. It's great. But if you do use a loan, then there's rules for IRAs and self-directed IRAs that do have some tax implications. And so I learned that. And so I still have a self-directed IRA with one. I'm down to one single family rental left. I've sold the rest of them just for the reasons I mentioned earlier. But when those tenants move out, I'll probably sell that one too. But I also have set up a solo 401k, which is a better investment vehicle, particularly when you use loans or there's leverage involved. Because as I mentioned, if you own it outright in your retirement account, that's fine. But if you do use a loan for an IRA, you actually have to pay a particular percentage of tax based off of the percentage of leverage you have in the deal. It's part of UBIT. It's called Unrelated Debt Financing Income, UDFI, and it can be a big deal. So
Yes.
I assign some of my interests into my solo 401k, and I do all of my, and you have more control. You don't need a custodian to ask permission to do this or that. You just got to follow the rules, know what the rules are. But I've invested in, that's how I invest in most of my passive deals, is with my retirement funds. And through solo 401k, I have an account at Schwab. I can just wire the funds to them. It's been great. I can invest it however I want. I can put it in the market or not when I want. I have much more control, but because syndications use leverages, they have a loan on the property for maybe 60%, 70% leverage on the property. That means if you did a $100,000 investment, you get in 5 years, you get $200,000 back. Of that $100,000 gain, you would have to pay tax on 60 or 70% of that, and with an IRA. But with the solo 401k, you don't. So that's a big savings for sure.
That's great. I'm glad you drew that distinction. I don't know that everybody necessarily knows that. Most people, I think, if you have an old 401k, a lot of times they'll tell you, hey, why don't you just roll that over into an IRA? And it sounds like good advice, but then you lose all of those benefits. So
right.
Yeah, anybody who's out there who has an old 401k from their former job, definitely, if I had the choice between the 401 and the IRA, I would definitely take that 401 and get some kind of, I don't even know what you call it. It's like a self-directed QRP or a self-directed
Right.
401.
There's different types of
Yeah.
They're all qualified retirement plans. There's just like the IRA version has very specific rules that are
Yeah.
not very advantageous. So
Exactly.
there's different ones out. The solo 401k, there's Damien has the EQRP.
EQRP. Yeah.
There's some other options out there. But if you go to your current 401k advisor, or they're typically investment advisors or something that are in control of certain accounts, depending upon how they're set up through your work or something, they will roll them over into something else that you want. But if you go to a normal financial advisor and say, oh, I want to put this into real estate, after telling you that that's risky and that's trading away and they aren't going to really support that, but they'll say, oh, if you want to be in real estate, let's put it in a REIT. You can be in multifamily through a stock, right? And I actually still have some of those, and I can tell you right now, the past year, they've not done anything like my actual assets.
Yeah, very true. So obviously there's a barrier of entry, right? If you want to invest in equities or bonds, that's easy. Everybody does that. Everybody who has any money is investing some money in equities or bonds. But real estate is a little harder to get into, and obviously comes with greater rewards.
Absolutely. Investments are generally always trying to mitigate risk versus reward. And that's one of the things that I thought was so funny the more I learned about real estate, is how much riskier the market is than real estate. There's much less risk associated with real estate. It's a hard asset, right? I mean, if it burns down, it's insured, you're fine. It's really a business plan you implement, and you make cash flow off of it. And if the market appreciates, that's like the stock market appreciating and going up. That's just the gravy, right? And there's cash flow and other tax advantages and all sorts of other things. But in terms of risk, real estate as an asset class is outstanding, and that's why most of the wealthiest people put their money there.
Yeah, love it. Good stuff. Well, before we head into the lightning round, I understand you have some interesting hobbies. I know at least that you're a scuba diver. Anything else?
Oh gosh, yeah, we do all sorts of stuff. We go out on the water and pull the kids around on the boat. We go downhill skiing. We go scuba diving. They actually got to learn to water ski in the Alps in Austria, so that was fun. Let's see, the kids all play sports galore and all that. I have a 15 and 12-year-old. That's all great. But I'm a stormtrooper, or I used to be an official Star Wars stormtrooper. They paid me to do some stuff for some events and go to the ballpark for Star Wars days and stuff like that, which was fun. Hospital visits and raising money for charities and stuff. That was good stuff. I had my kids do that as well. I made them some like little Boba Fett costume and stuff. They ran around. It was good stuff. Fun. Yeah, I'm a geek. I like that stuff. That's kind of what I imposed on my children.
Good stuff. All right. How about this? Are you ready to head into the lightning round, Tim?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. All right. Tell us something about one of your real estate markets that most people wouldn't know.
Well, here in Phoenix, I'd probably just say the California thing. Most people don't know that it's Californians are still doing a mass exodus everywhere. They're going not just to Arizona. It's like 400 a day, I think, maybe. Moving to Arizona is the last statistic I heard. That's a lot.
Wow. Yeah. 49ers in reverse.
Right.
What's some advice you would give your younger self?
Work on myself more. Like I said, when I was in university, I was working on myself in terms of like professional skills, but not personal skills. And so that was something I wish I would have stayed on top of, focused on earlier.
What's the best real estate advice you've ever received?
I'm going to flip that one and say not worst, but there's advice. They say if you find a deal, the money will come.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not really true. So that does lead into a good piece of advice. But if you have a really good network and it's a really good deal, you'll probably be okay. You'll probably be able to find the money. But for the most part, finding money, I think, is paramount. And that gets to probably the best real estate advice that I got was your network is your net worth. And coming from science, I didn't appreciate that, right? We're supposed to have blind reviewers of grants and papers, and there's not supposed to be a lot of nepotism in science, right? The data speaks for itself. You're supposed to have it peer reviewed but anonymously and stuff, and you're not supposed to have those sort of leverages. But in reality, that's how things work. We team up to get things done in the real world. And I would say the more I've gotten into business, that's been one of the biggest lessons for me and advice, is because when you need partners, you're raising capital for a deal, your network is everything. It affects my ability to find deals. That's all been through my network.
Excellent. Well, this is the part of the interview where we take a nod to the randomness of the universe. I've got some random questions here. Just tell me when to stop cutting the deck. This could be something entirely whimsical, or it could be something very profound.
All right. Now, please. That's a huge deck. That's awesome.
Oh, wow. This is interesting. Actually, it's somewhat relevant. What makes a house a home?
The people.
All right.
The people, hands down. It's always about creating relationships and creating an environment where people are safe and happy to do what they need to do, right? I mean, that's the one thing with those. I wouldn't call those Nashville apartments a home, because they're too restricted, right? It's temporary. They can't quite. That's like the reason most of the tenants, when they leave, they say, "Yeah, I'm ready to move something bigger because I can't quite do what I need to do here." But it's great for what they need at the time. But they can't have a family in there, for example.
Good stuff. Name a book that's helped to forge you as a leader and an entrepreneur.
Well, besides the Purple Little Bible by Kiyosaki, I guess I would say the one that I really liked is, well, The Obstacles Away is a good one, because that's about taking action. But James Clear's Atomic Habits, I really like that one. That had a lot of actionable advice in it too. There's a good quote in there that kind of sums up the book. To me, is we don't rise to our goals, but we fall to the level of our systems. And
I
think that's basically, you don't know exactly how you're going to get to your goal, but as long as you know what your goal is and know why you want to get there, you basically set up routines and habits to make sure it's inevitable.
Excellent. How has a failure or misstep set you up for later success?
All the time. I'm learning all the time, and I pretty much learn from failures right and left. I don't have a good example for that.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. We can skip it. You've already given us some quotes. Do you have any other quotes that you'd like to send us out with?
Gosh, I got a lot of quotes I like. I'm drawing a blank on the perfect one. Noste ipsum, maybe. I think that's the Latin. I think it's one of the maxims, or whatever. It's know thyself, right? That's something, again, when you're too busy, you don't have time to sit down and actually figure out where you're going and why. And so I think that's paramount. A lot of people are reactive, right? They just go through life doing what they need to and not what they should do.
Great, Tim. This has been an excellent interview. How can our listeners reach out to you?
Find me on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Tim Fergestad, or go to our website, Oak Street Assets.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking your time to share your knowledge and experience with our audience, Tim.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.